What if the greatest secret about our soul was drowned beneath the waves? What if Atlantis wasn't a myth but a mirror, a memory, a forgotten echo of who we once were and who we're meant to become? Long before pyramids pierced the skies of Egypt or sages whispered truths into temple walls, there was said to be a luminous civilization, not just advanced in science, but in spirit. A realm where consciousness shaped matter, where the soul wasn't a mystery to be solved, but a truth to be lived. This was Atlantis. To the modern world, it's a fable, a fantasy Plato mused about over 2,000 years ago. But to the seekers, the mystics, the guardians of ancient wisdom, it was real. And it held secrets about the human soul that could change everything we believe about life, death, and the purpose in between. You see, Atlantis was more than a lost continent. It was a spiritual blueprint of civilization that understood reincarnation, soul contracts, and the divine architecture of evolution far beyond our comprehension today. They knew that beneath the flesh and bone of every being lies a radiant light of soul on a journey of remembrance, and they built their temples, technologies, and teachings to serve that journey. But what happened to them? Why did such wisdom vanish beneath the ocean floor, sealed away in myth? And most importantly, what if the fall of Atlantis wasn't just a historical event but a symbol of our own spiritual forgetting? In this video, we'll unlock the hidden truth behind Atlantis, not the tourist version, not the conspiracy bait, but the esoteric knowledge buried beneath layers of sand, time, and silence. We'll explore what ancient texts and mystics really said about Atlantis, the Atlantean view of the soul's journey before birth and after death, the spiritual cause of their downfall and what it warns us about today, and how you can reclaim the forgotten wisdom of your soul, here and now. This isn't just history. This is your inheritance. And once you remember, you'll never see yourself the same way again. Our earliest glimpse of Atlantis comes from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who claimed to have learned of the lost civilization from Egyptian priests. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, Plato described Atlantis as a great island empire that flourished over 9,000 years before his time, surpassing all others in wealth, knowledge, and spiritual power. A land of shimmering orichalcum, sacred geometry, and soaring temples aligned with the stars. But Plato's tale wasn't just about geography, it was a warning, a civilization born of divine order that fell into corruption and ego. And when they strayed too far from their spiritual path, nature swallowed them whole. The world dismissed Plato's story as allegory, but esoteric traditions whispered another view. Atlantis was real, but it wasn't just a place. It was a state of being, a collective spiritual memory encoded deep within the soul of humanity. Across cultures, echoes of Atlantis persist. In Hindu texts, Lemurian-like civilizations are said to have perished in great floods followed by a dark age. The Hopi speak of past worlds lost to water when people forgot their sacred purpose. Even the emerald tablets of Thoth, esoteric work attributed to an Atlantean priest king, describe an ancient fall of light into shadow, a soul-born civilization undone by its own arrogance. This isn't coincidence. It's a pattern, a cosmic cycle. In the Hermetic tradition, the principle of as above, so below teaches that the outer world reflects the inner. Atlantis may have been a real land, but more importantly, it was a mirror of what happens when divine consciousness is misused. Atlanteans were said to be soul scientists, beings who understood the chakras as stargates, the pineal gland as a portal, and karma as a sacred contract. They built crystal-powered temples not just for energy but to awaken memory. They knew that each human life is a chosen path for the soul to grow through joy, suffering, and realization. But power, even spiritual power, tests the soul. As they drifted from service to control, their temples became towers, their light became pride, and like Icarus, they soared too high. The flood that came wasn't just water. It was symbolic of purification, a reset, a chance for the soul of humanity to start again, this time, remembering what was lost. This is why the truth of Atlantis was hidden, not to deceive us, but to protect us until we were ready to reclaim it consciously. And now, in a world of rising frequency and mass awakening, the memory returns. Through dreams, synchronicities, and a longing for something we can't quite name, we're beginning to remember. The question is, why now? And what did the Atlanteans truly understand about the soul? The Atlanteans were not just builders of cities, they were architects of the soul. To them, life was a sacred school. Every incarnation was a lesson. Every relationship, every challenge, every joy or pain was chosen, not by chance, but by the soul before birth. They believed and taught that the human body was a vessel, a temple for divine consciousness to experience itself in form, that the soul wasn't something we had, it was what we are, eternal, multidimensional, infinitely evolving. Imagine a civilization where reincarnation wasn't a belief, but a fact, where children were guided to remember their past lives, where death wasn't feared, but understood as a transition, a shedding of costume between acts of a much greater cosmic play. Atlanteans practiced what we might call soul recall. Through sound resonance, sacred breathwork, and light-infused meditation, they accessed their soul memories. They could revisit the reasons they chose their current lives. They understood karmic loops not as punishments, but as opportunities to refine the self. But it goes deeper. They saw the universe itself as a living organism, a tapestry of souls evolving together. Every planet, every star system, every human and non-human consciousness interwoven through the fabric of a higher intelligence. They taught that the soul's journey wasn't linear, it spiraled, like the galaxies, like DNA. Each spiral brought us back to the same themes, but at a higher level of understanding: love, power, loss, creation. Their temples were not just places of worship, they were resonance chambers, designed with flawless acoustics, geometric alignments, and crystalline lattices that amplified spiritual frequency. You didn't just pray, there you remembered. One such temple, known in esoteric circles as the Temple of Poseidon, was said to house the great crystal, a conscious energy source that mirrored the Akashic records, allowing souls to retrieve lost wisdom. It wasn't magic, it was science of the Sula, technology of consciousness. But not everyone in Atlantis used these gifts for awakening. As generations passed, some began to manipulate soul energy not to evolve, but to control. They experimented with cloning consciousness, storing soul patterns, even creating hybrid vessels devoid of true spiritual essence. The soul, once revered, became a commodity. And this was the beginning of the end. A spiritual civilization that had once nurtured divine light began to cast shadows, and like all civilizations who forget their sacred center, Atlantis began to fall. But the soul never forgets. And through you, through your questions, your dreams, your longing, it speaks again. Most people think Atlantis fell because of a flood, but the esoteric traditions say otherwise. The real collapse began long before the waters rose. Atlantis fell because it forgot the soul. As the Atlanteans reached the peak of their spiritual and technological mastery, a split emerged. On one side were the sons of the Law of One, those who upheld unity, soul remembrance, and service to the divine plan. On the other, the sons of Belial, those who pursued dominance, material manipulation, and egoic control. This wasn't just a political conflict. It was a spiritual war, not of weapons, but of consciousness. The sons of Belial began to distort the sacred sciences. Soul memory technologies were twisted into tools for genetic tampering. Crystals once used to heal and elevate frequency were repurposed to store energy, to surveil minds, to bind beings to synthetic life cycles. They tampered with the veil of incarnation, attempting to trap souls in cycles not of learning but servitude, a synthetic immortality disconnected from source. And yet, all of it was allowed not by cruelty, but by cosmic law. Because in the grand scheme of soul evolution, even darkness is a teacher. The Atlantean downfall became the archetype, the great cautionary tale etched into the collective unconscious. And it's no accident that this myth rises now, because we are living the mirror. Our modern world echoes Atlantis: vast technological prowess, obsession with control, disconnection from the natural world, and a forgetting of who we truly are. But there's a twist. While the Atlanteans fell asleep in their power, you are waking up in yours. And the very questions you're asked about Atlantis, the soul, the truth of who we are part of a great remembering. In the depths of your being, you carry fragments of that ancient wisdom. Why do you feel pulled to sacred geometry? To crystals? To the stars? Because once, you knew them. Your soul may have walked those Atlantean halls, stood beneath luminous domes, chanted the sacred tones that opened portals between realms. You might have seen the fall with your own eyes and vowed to return when the world was ready to choose differently. And now, the choice is here. You can repeat the cycle of forgetting, or you can awaken and become the bridge between ancient memory and future light. Because Atlantis wasn't lost. It was seated. In you, in us, in every soul ready to reclaim their truth. So, the question becomes, if the wisdom of Atlantis lives within you, how do you awaken it? How do you remember the truth of your soul not as an idea, but as an embodied reality? The first step is to return to resonance. Atlantean teachings were not just intellectual, they were experiential. They knew that the soul responds not to logic, but to frequency. Here are 3 ancient aligned practices, simple, yet deeply potento, begin restoring your soul's memory. 1. Crystal resonance and water memory. In Atlantis, crystals were understood as living intelligence record keepers of light. To attune to their frequency, choose a clear quartz or aquamarine stone said to carry Atlantean codes. Submerge the crystal in a glass bowl of spring water overnight under moonlight. The next morning, place both hands around the bowl and speak aloud your soul's intention. I call back the memory of who I truly am. Drink slowly, breathe. Listen, let memory rise not as words, but as feelings. This is not superstition, it's resonant technology. Water, like the soul, remembers. 2. Tuning the inner temple, voice and vibration. Atlanteans knew the power of the human voice as a sacred instrument. Their temples were built to echo mantras that activated the pineal gland and heart field. Each morning, in stillness, repeat this ancient Atlantean seed tone. Rama Thasa. Breathe in through the nose. On the exhale, chant the tone slowly, allowing the vibration to move from your chest to your third eye. Repeat 7 times. You are not just making sound. You are reactivating a forgotten portal, the soul's own temple. 3. The mirror ritual, soul alignment. Stand before a mirror, candlelit. Gaze into your own eyes not as a personality, but as a presence. Ask aloud, why did I come here again? What am I meant to reclaim in this lifetime? Then, wait, don't force. Let the silence become sacred. Atlantean adepts practiced eye-gazing with one another to see past the form to remember the soul beneath. You can do the same with yourself. The point of these practices isn't to pretend you're someone else. It's to reveal that you are more than you remember. But even the Atlanteans stumbled. That's why integration is everything. Here's what to watch for. Don't get lost in fantasy or superiority. True Atlantean wisdom is humble, not flashy. Avoid bypassing your human wounds. Remember, the soul evolves through the human, not around it. And most importantly, stay connected to service. Atlantis thrived when purpose served the collective. Ego divida spirit unifies. Your job is not to recreate Atlantis in its old form. Your job is to live what it meant at its best. A soul-centered life. A conscious community. A remembrance of divine truth within human form. You are the echo of Atlantis, returning not to repeat, but to transform. Atlantis was never just a city. It was a frequency. A spiritual vibration, echoing through time, waiting to be remembered by those who feel the call in their bones. You are not drawn to this story by accident. If you've watched this far, it's because your soul remembers. Not in words, but in deep, silent stirrings. In the way your heart responds to truth. In the way your body awakens when ancient knowledge returns. Atlantis may have fallen, but its essence lives in every being ready to rise. You are part of that rising. When you live with intention, when you align with your soul's purpose, when you choose love over control, awakening over comfort, you become a bridge between worlds. Between ancient memory and future evolution. This journey isn't about escaping the world. It's about transforming within it. That is what the Atlanteans forgot. And that is what you now have the power to remember. So ask yourself today, right now, what truth am I ready to reclaim? What light am I ready to embody? What part of Atlantis still lives in me? The answers won't come all at once. They'll come in dreams, synchronicities, whispers. But they will come because the soul always returns to what it has loved. If this message stirred something within you, don't let it fade. Like, share, and subscribe to continue the path of remembering. And in the comments, tell us what part of Atlantis you feel calling you back. Until next time, stay awake, stay ancient, and remember, you are more than you think. You are eternal.